passing ships in a sea of time. Many lifetimes a hand graced mine. We first met in the cradle of mankind. I traversed many lands looking for my one and only. Walked the earth for ages feeling lonely. Our time came and went, forever sniffing the airwaves looking for her scent. She was an empress, a temptress, me a mere soldier trying to impress. I got down on one knee to confess, but the king saw me do it and put me to death. In each lifetime I feel her breath, the beat of her heart in her chest. Wandering the ages in distress, she's the princess, the finest finesse. My emotions regress, reincarnation, this trepidation. A warrior with Alexander the Great, I was a tragic fate. She was Helen of Troy, and I was a Trojan, this theologian, frozen in time, searching for an omen. In every lifetime a martyr, growing smarter, we lived this over and over like karma. We found each other again in the Middle Ages, many times in history's pages. She knew it was me, with many faces, many places. She's always gracious in all of our exchanges. These passing ships, many lifetimes, she graces my lips, but her hands always slip. She seems to slide through my fingertips, tragedy always seems to eclipse. We fall apart from each other's grip. I came back breathing as a heathen in the army of Ivor the Boneless. We decimated your village, your religion, and made your people homeless. I fell for you again when I saw you looking hopeless. I saw the raven as a sign to stop being a pagan. You're the finest maiden. I was burned at the stake because I was in league with Satan. My soul starts to reawaken. I built you a castle like a mason. Me and you in the hills a safe haven. It seems through history she's part of a dream, part of the court of Louis XVI. She was taken to the guillotine, so sick I jumped from a ravine. Years later we'd meet again in the age of the machine. She's my queen, always she reigned supreme, and she always filled me with self-esteem. I was sent to the trenches, tangled in barbed wire fences. As my breath gave out, I remembered our clenches, our many adventures. Our love will always be endless. To find you will spare no expenses. So many questions, so many turns, so many directions, so many expressions, so many lessons. You survived the Great Depression, years of austerity and recession. Now it's 2026, we blast off into a space station, off to Mars on a vacation. No more separation, we're a beautiful combination. We meet each other over and over through reincarnation. Our souls are we're immortal, and I was captured from the beginning. Without her there's many lives I aren't really living. And in this sea of time we're forever swimming. Hold your love tightly, whatever the costs, cause without her I'll always be lost. Cunning linguist instrumental. Yes. And that's from my last album. That's the last track on my last album, Lost at CLP. And that's called Draz, Love in a Sea of Time. So let me turn this one down. There we go. Episode 8-Time. You notice I've been away for 2 weeks. That feels like a long time. I've been off doing busy stuff like passing me driving test, and then my mum's been here decorating my bathroom, insisting on it. So welcome to all my fellow time travellers, making history with every millisecond we breathe. Tonight we'll look at time from a personal perspective, from a scientific angle, from a human race view. We'll take over the possibilities that time travel might be real. What are the implications if someone does? So have a think, if you could go back to one place and one time in your life, one-way ticket, where would you go and what would you do? People automatically think about making themselves rich or better off. I'll tell you how I'd make myself better with no money. I'd go and put a letter through my door with all the pitfalls that I've faced in life and all the dick moves that I've made. All the dick moves listed in a column with a date in bold red letters saying dick move. But you know, we'll talk about interacting with past selves later on when we get into the science shit. Maybe I'd win the lottery and set up loads of projects for poor people and start a city in the desert like Dubai and just make loads of really smart, well-off people who are educated and free from the burdens of debt and from the callous brutality that they face from a tyrannical government and the despotic regimes of democracy. Yeah, hypocrisy. Now that's an idea. And there's an idea that goes back to 1958. Or maybe go back to the war and give the British loads of atomic weapons and tanks and stuff like that. World War One. So how are we time travelling? How is this possible? There's two ways, firstly, and that's through Earth's gravity and movement in space. And secondly, is through our minds. We're always thinking back through our memories and wondering, what if? Those were the good times. I wish it were like that now. And then we think into the future of what we want and who we want to be. So we're never really in the present. We spend all this time rushing around, giving our best years away to working to live rather than living to work. This human consciousness being blocked away from moving forward. We're like on a wheel or in a hamster cage, and it seems to exist yesterday and tomorrow, point A, B, C, then back again, when we should just keep going from point A to point A to point A, something new and fresh and continual, instead of chasing and chasing. But here's what's making the chase even harder, is this recent lack of community cohesion and spiritual oneness. And I'll give you an example of time perception. Only last week did the council come and clear up where I live, and then a day later it seemed like it was all full again in the alleyways. Went by in the blink of an eye that it was back there again. It was like living in Groundhog Day, but really it was probably more like a week, 2 weeks since it filled up again. There's times for me where time for me, there's been places where I've been where time doesn't seem to exist, when I've been on the other side of the world in a hammock and you're watching the waves and it felt like you've been there for hours, but in real time it was only 45 minutes. The perception of time skewed. Like, you know how when you're really busy, time seems to go fast, doesn't it? Well, my soul's kind of forever trapped in that moment, and it's almost frozen in time like a photograph in my memory. And when I speak to my mate in Australia, technically we're time travelling through video chat, but only in a man-made construct sense of the word time travelling, aren't we? Because time is really a man-made construct, and without a watch there would only be day and night, seasons, or the passage of time. You know, before watches, how did people live? Before the Romans came along with the frickin', what's them thing called? With the dial, sundial. So a yogi can sit for years on the same spot with no food or drink, no toilet break, like they're in sort of cryostasis, and they live to a ripe old age. Now that's like form of time travel. Why is the past important to us as a species? Well, it reminds us of who we are and how we were made, and it keeps us on track not to repeat our mistakes. It makes us proud of our forebears that strived and died to provide for our lineage. The future is important, otherwise we have nothing to strive for. There's this mad theory that only last week really exists. I can't get my head around it. If anyone's smarter than me, go look it up and get back to me and tell me what that's all about. I like films about time travel. Terminator, Back to the Future, Time Cop, Bill and Ted, Time Bandits, The Butterfly Effect, Interstellar, Flight of the Navigator, and these kind of films that test your powers of logic about what is time travel. And someone tried explaining Terminator to me once, and it just don't work. The logic of it don't work, and all the dates and that don't work, but it's a good film anyway. And I think my love of history makes my love and interest in time travel more interesting. When I go to the Discovery Museum and I see the Sega Mega Drive or the old PlayStation in the glass case, it makes me feel old. How is it that the console that I played on as a kid, only 20 years ago, is now in a museum? And it looks archaic when I take the kids in my class on a field trip. I'm like, look, that I used to have one of them PlayStation Mega Drive. I remember them. I had a skateboard that looked like that, yeah. Freaking hell. I remember when so and so wore that football kit in that glass case. It makes you feel old. So maybe that's it, my love of nostalgia, and that's why I wanted to do this podcast. And someone requested that I do this podcast about time travel, because there's a lot of people coming out saying that they're time travellers, and I don't believe any of it. I don't for a second. Where would you go Would you go back to the pyramids when they're being built and see how it was done? Would you go and hang out with the Greek scholars or hang out with Einstein while he equates time? And there's this thing where they put they say the moving clock on a plane loses time compared to one that's stationary. So one that's moving, even your watch when you're moving, loses time compared to one that's stationary. And if you were to travel at light speed, you wouldn't hardly age. But everything you left behind would age. And the Earth would age. The Earth you left behind probably wouldn't even be there. The sun might not be there when you get back, because you've travelled through light speed and the Earth's carried on aging. I don't know how quite works. And there's this guy in America who's practicing time travelling with particles already. They go in a loop from where the machine first gets switched on. And if someone does invent a time machine, will someone powerful and evil steal it, or will they use it for wrongdoing? There's that guy called Andrew Basiago who claims that he time travelled as a kid, and he's an attorney, which makes him a little bit more credible than these other idiots whose story's full of holes. His story sounds a bit more solid, but he's obviously practiced what he's going to say, and he claims that he was a chrononaut. A chrononaut is someone who time travels, and he was part of Project Pegasus when he was a little kid, which is also interplanetary as well as time, and he's got no evidence or witnesses to corroborate him doing it. And there's that other guy, John Titor, as well, and the two of them can't agree on what the future holds. But when they've been asked about it, they say, oh well, you know, there's loads of variations in the future you can go to. And one of the best mysteries you can find on time travel on Tinternet is the hipster on the bridge wearing pretty futuristic looking glasses and a printed t-shirt and having cool hair, and he just looks out of place. And there's another one of a guy sitting with a bunch of miners who looks totally out of place with big long hair, and his clothes are different, and everyone in the picture's looking at him because he stands out. And then there is what you call a time slip, and there's a good time slip on Google Earth, and you can look for this. It's the Google Earth Lancaster bomber, and it's over a town, but you know there's a limited amount of Lancaster bombers out there, and there was none of them flying on this day in that area. So there you go. Or there's a record in history of a pilot who experienced a time slip during World War I, where he flew out of the mist to an airfield that didn't exist, and the clothes and planes were out of time and place. Only later did it go on to be an airfield in World War II, where it looked exactly as he described. And there's some good time slip videos on YouTube as well, you know, like the car appearing from nowhere at the crossroads. There's planes that are just hanging in one spot, which is weird. It's like Matrix style shit. The plane's just not moving, like it's coming into land, but it's just staying there. That's a good one. Or there's a kid on a bike that goes past twice really quickly in the blink of an eye, and they look exactly the same. So they could be twins, I don't know, go look it up. But the reason that time travel gets difficult is because of a paradox. So this means if you go back in time to win the lottery and you got rich, this means years later you'd never need to have to go back in time to win the lottery. Therefore you would never get rich from winning the lotto, and it creates an impossible loop in a space-time continuum. So it's not theoretically possible. But there's this guy called Dr. David Anderson, and he's pioneered a time warp field generator to deliver particle or practical time control. And he's got what is like a remote control to speed up and slow time down. And it's what he calls time dilation device, and it only works within the field of where the machine is, using electromagnetic forces that rotate with 12 high-powered lasers that would take the energy of a sun to make it possible to time travel a person. Okay, so it creates an area in a space. Even after they reduce the power levels, it sort of keeps going, and it opens the warp field, and it keeps going on its own even after they've reduced the power. I mean, this is dangerous stuff you're playing with the laws of nature that we know of. And they're able to have 2 clocks, one inside and one outside of this field. And they noticed that the one inside, when they speed it up, is going 300% faster inside of the field. And then when they slow it down, they can get it to 35% slower. But it becomes unstable when they try and slow time down, which means they think that you couldn't go back in time. So we need to live in the here and now anyway. And as I've heard it said, if you keep one eye on the past, you're blind in one eye. But if you take both eyes off the past, you are blind altogether. So imagine today and imagine tomorrow. They're your only days to build success. Build success daily. Grab the ones you love and tell them how much they mean. Seize the moment, because we make history as we speak in perpetual motion. We're shadows and dust Maximus. For what we do in life echoes an eternity. Our bodies are made from proteins 5 billion years old. So sorry to keep it short and sweet. Good night to my fellow time travellers, and I shall see you in the next episode, next time, for Conspiracies episode 9. Shout out to Lee Davis, my driving instructor, for getting me through my driving test. Yes, love you very much. See you later. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.